Hello, folks. This is Rebecca Adams and Becky Vermeer with Free to Soar.
Hello.
And of course,
Teddy.
Teddy.
Teddy
Yes.
says hi tonight too. Oh.
Teddy is feeling his oats tonight. Just want to warn you.
Teddy's going to be a frisky little co-host tonight.
That's quite all right. I don't think there's a single person out there that minds it. So, folks, we are going to get to hear from Becky tonight. This is awesome.
Wait, we're going to get to hear from you too.
Yeah, because you're going to be our answer person. So.
Oh boy. Well, that'll be fun.
Yes, it will be. It will be. I love just having conversations with you because I learned so much, and I just feel like we can have good rapport bouncing back and forth with each other.
Yep, me too.
So let me give your bio for anybody that hasn't watched before. Becky Vermeer is the executive director for the Crisis Center of Taney County and has begun her 26th year in that position.
I certainly have. You're right.
She started when, excuse me, she started when she was 2 years old, just so you know. Yeah. She is responsible for grant writing, fundraising, programming, staff oversight, and community awareness activities. Becky graduated from the College of the Ozarks with a double major in psychology, philosophy, and religion. Becky has served statewide on the board of directors for the Missouri Coalition Against Domestic and Sexual Violence and held the offices of president and vice president for 4 years consecutively. Becky has been asked by multiple statewide associations to present trainings on domestic and sexual violence. Finally, Becky has been qualified by the local court system as a domestic violence expert witness and is called upon to provide testimony for the prosecution in domestic violence cases. That's probably one of the most exciting pieces for me when I read your bio.
And you know what? That has expanded more than just locally. Actually, I've been doing a lot more testimony across the state. So it's no longer just in Taney County anymore.
That is so exciting.
Yeah, I know.
Oh my goodness. That's awesome. That's really awesome.
Yeah, that's something I enjoy.
I bet you do. I can
see why I enjoy it is because I had a conversation with an attorney 2 weeks ago. I was subpoenaed to testify on a case. And I had a conversation with an attorney, and he was saying to me, really what I want to do in the courtroom is I want to go and blow up a big diagram of the power and control wheel. And I'm just looking for you to provide education to the judge, is how he said it. And then he said, oh, wait, maybe I shouldn't say education to the judge. Maybe that doesn't sound respectful. And I said, well, whether it's respectful or not, I 100% agree with you that our judges need education. And so why I say I enjoy it is because I know that even though I'm there on behalf of a victim, I'm also getting that opportunity to provide some education to the judge, to the jury, to whoever happens to be in the courtroom. And so I enjoy it because it's an opportunity to take the information that I've gleaned over the years and use it to assist a victim in a completely different way.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see that. When you first told me that, I got so excited because of the possibilities for what you just said.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a great opportunity. So anytime I get the chance to do it, I try as hard as I possibly can to make sure that it's going to work with my schedule.
That is so cool.
Yeah, in fact, I've got a case coming up, or a trial coming up in 2 weeks. Awesome. 2 weeks from today, actually.
Really? Okay. Yeah. Okay. That's awesome. So will we be able to record that night, you think?
We'll have to play that one by ear. Okay. It's in Springfield, so probably, in theory.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha. Not a problem. Well, Becky and I thought tonight we would talk about how to find a voice and what that topic means, just really break it down, because I'm not 100% positive I understand it myself. So, Becky, why don't you fill us in on what that means exactly?
Well, I'll tell you, I'm going to start out by asking you a couple of questions.
Okay.
And so primarily when we're talking about wanting to find your voice, my question initially for you is, why do you feel like you don't have one? If you feel like you don't have one, why would you feel like you don't have one?
I'm beginning to have a voice, but I feel like I'm, maybe maybe in the toddler crawling stages, or maybe the toddler walking, not real sure. My I definitely don't have my sea legs yet. If that kind of gives you perspective. I think it's because I've spent 48 years as a victim, and it's so new to me that I'm not really sure how to do it. I'm not really sure what I should say, how I should say it. Um, and I don't want to be disrespectful most of the time. I don't want to be disrespectful. Um, but yet I want to get my point across. So yeah, I'm just not used to talking
Right.
in that kind of a situation.
Well, frankly, if you've been a victim of abuse, anybody who's ever experienced domestic violence, family violence of any kind, you're taught in that experience that your voice doesn't matter.
Mhm.
My dad used to have a t-shirt. My dad's really sarcastic. I don't understand it, but my dad's really sarcastic. And
No, I
so
know you don't understand.
my dad used to have a t-shirt that was just ornery and fun, and his shirt said, when I want your opinion, I'll give it to you. And so that was just kind of fitting in with my dad's personality and stuff. And so we always made fun of him for that and everything else. But I'll use that same statement and take it away from my very loving, very kind, very good natured dad, and turn it into a situation that's an abusive situation. And it takes on a completely different connotation. But in an abusive scenario, the victim is taught, you don't have a voice, your opinion does not matter. And so there's a little bit of that, when I want your opinion, I'll give it to you. There is really
Mhm.
very much strongly in a controlling, demeaning, aggressive way. That's the lesson that's taught to the
Mhm.
victim in that scenario. And so even if a woman or a victim has the ability to escape from that situation, that's a message, that's an incredibly powerful message that's really challenging to quiet down.
Mhm.
And so I would venture to guess that, you're talking 48 years of abuse, you've been told your opinion doesn't matter.
In a
Or if you
silent
were in a
way.
situation,
Yeah,
huh?
in a silent way.
Yes.
Mhm.
Or if
Yeah.
you were in a situation where you had the opportunity to present it, you were probably told you're wrong,
Mhm.
or I don't care what you have to say,
Mhm.
or there's another honorary expression that goes around in my family unit that says, your ridiculous little opinion has been noted. Again, in a sarcastic tone, but in an abusive tone, that's sincere. Like, I don't really care what you have to say.
Mhm.
So one of the most challenging things I think victims find when they're coming out of that abusive relationship is, how do I have a voice? And we've talked about it before in a little bit of a different way, because when you've been told you don't have the right to have an opinion, and you've been told, I don't care what you have to say, or what you say is wrong, or you're stupid, or all of those negative messages, until you find yourself out from under the thumb of the abuser and in a place that's safe, you've never really had the opportunity to express yourself in any way. And so I think we've even talked in a former episode about one of the great things that victims glean when they come to the crisis center and they move from that victim status to that survivor status is they find a safe place where they can begin to exercise using their voice. The challenging thing that we typically face in at that point is, a lot of times it comes across as aggressive.
Mhm.
And so, we have to have, excuse me, conversations about what's the difference between aggression and assertion, and how's the right way to say things.
Right.
But I think that's one of the greatest gifts that we give people at the crisis center, is a safe space where they can begin to find their voice.
Mhm.
But just because you have that safe space doesn't necessarily mean you just start talking with confidence,
True.
or with the assurity that, hey, what I'm saying is correct, or
Mm.
how does that translate into establishing boundaries and all of those kind of things.
Mhm.
Those are all skills that someone has to learn post abuse.
Definitely.
And I also think that there's a little bit of we buy into those negative messages of what I have to say is not valuable. And so there, there's a lot to be said for finding a network of support that's willing to say, oh, your words are valuable.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I respect your opinion. Oh, thank you for your thoughts on that. And, the best thing I think is when we find ourselves in a position where we have a group that's willing to ask us our opinion,
Mm-hmm.
because the more that our opinion is asked and the more that we're able to share it, and the more that we find out, oh, you don't think I'm stupid, or you're not going to fight with me, or you're not going to shut me down, then I'm going to be saying a little bit more next time and a little bit
Mm-hmm.
more next time until maybe I won't be still anymore. Which, you know what? People have the right to talk incessantly if they want to.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Not that I'm suggesting for a second that you would do that,
I have been known to. Well, that's interesting you would say that because I have a group of ladies that meets here at my house every week. And we do have that. It's an extremely safe place where we can literally just bare our hearts as to what we're thinking, feeling, just all sorts of things. And so one of the things we have started studying is boundaries. I think that's interesting that you brought that up. And so I'm again, now I feel like in the boundaries area that I'm a baby crawling, if I'm even crawling. Okay. I may be the kind that, I'm on my hands and knees and I'm rocking and I'm trying to figure out how to walk or how to crawl. Um, that's where I am on the boundaries. But it does really help a lot to have this group of ladies. And I have other friends too that I can be totally open with. I had a friend that I went to pick out some furniture, took her with me, and I knew she would keep me grounded, and she did.
Mm-hmm.
And as we talked, there were a couple of things that she just really helped me understand and see that she's just good like that. She knows me. We've known each other for 30 some years. And so so I have more friends that I can do this with than just this one group of ladies. And that really does help. I think one thing that might be a hindrance for me is that currently I'm working at home still at the tail end of COVID. We don't know what that's going to look like and how long it will take before we're back in the office. Um, but I'm supposed to go back in one day a week. But even then, there aren't very many people in the office. We each have a different day that we come in. So I think not being around people not being around people a lot, I think is also a hindrance and preventing me actually from being able to grow in that area, if that makes sense.
It does. So in your personal life, do you feel like you have the space to express yourself without any problem?
I think so. That's a good question. Sometimes when somebody they'll bring up something that they've seen in me that they want to discuss, somebody really close to me, like my son, and I can feel like I'm back in that same scenario of not being able to really speak. And he's very loving. He's very respectful of me. That's not it at all. Um, and I don't know why it is. And actually, it's both of my sons. I can just absolutely just crawl in the corner and just sit there like that, And I'm not really sure why that is. I don't know.
Do you feel like it's because you might say something they don't want to hear?
That's a good point. Yeah, that could be. Yeah.
Because there's also a dynamic, for lack of a better term, that comes from someone coming out of an abusive relationship that there's still a little bit of a fear factor sometimes of, if I say the wrong thing, it's conditional love. And so they'll love me as long as I'm saying this. But then if I say something contradictory to their opinion or something that they don't want to hear, they might not still value me or love me. So it's conditional. So I don't want to say things. I mean, that's dealing in an abusive relationship. There's a lot of that goes on of, is it safe for me to say this thing? And when he says, the abuser says, well, don't you love me? Of course I have to say yes, because if I say no, and I still might, that's a bad example, but
Yeah.
the behavior is based on how I answer the question. And so I wonder if there's still a little bit of that ingrained in you, that behavior, their response towards you depends on how you answer the question, that it's still not 100% safe, even though they're both loving, caring people in your life.
That's a very good point. And that brings up another point of being codependent, because I went through a year-long study with some other people, and I very definitely have found that I have struggled with codependency, because, and I think because of you could pick that apart easier than I could, but with the years of domestic violence that I've experienced. So yeah, that definitely would have something to do with why that factors in with my sons. That makes sense.
Yeah. You hit a little bit of a buzzword with me, if you don't mind if I chase a rabbit trail for a second.
You go right ahead.
Because I can actually hear myself saying, is she not going to say something? Because I have a little bit of an issue with the word codependency.
Okay.
When you put it in an abusive relationship, and I'll tell you why.
Okay.
So I understand codependency and ins and outs 100% in like a substance abuse situation where you're married to a drug addict or you're married to an alcoholic. That's where that word is predominantly fitting.
Mm-hmm.
Why I think that the word codependency doesn't belong in an abusive relationship. We'll step back again. So say in an alcoholic situation, and there's alcoholism in the family, and say maybe you're the wife of an alcoholic, you make a choice to do what you do in that situation to caretake the alcoholic through their addiction, right?
Right.
We do this with the children, or we do this with the house, or we say this to the boss or whatever. I mean, we make a choice to do that and provide that covering and provide that protection.
Mm-hmm.
It's a choice that we make, though, right?
Right.
Would you agree with that?
Oh yeah.
Okay. So let's fast forward then back to talking about a domestic violence situation, an abusive relationship. What have we learned? The one thing that we've learned over and over again about domestic violence: abusers are motivated by power and control.
Mm-hmm.
Abusers function in such a way as to take a choice away from the victim. And so when psychologists and counselors and psychiatrists want to throw that word out to someone who's a victim of domestic violence, well, you're codependent, I disagree 100%. Because codependency implies you have a choice. And when you're in an abusive relationship and the abuser does everything they can to maintain that power and control, they completely focus on taking your choice away.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that codependency belongs in a domestic violence relationship. Just my opinion. And so you have the right to disagree with that or whatever else. But I would be remiss if I didn't share that, because I spend a lot of time saying that to people in my daily work life. I just want to make sure that we don't forget that we're talking about choices, and we've talked about this a lot. In an abusive relationship, you don't have choices. Your choice is to survive.
Mm-hmm.
And so you say what you have to say today to survive. You may say something completely different tomorrow to survive. You do what you have to do today. You may not do it again tomorrow. All those choices, I use the word choices in that, but that's your survival skills kicking in.
Exactly. And yet I can also, and I love that. Thank you for pointing that out, because I know we've talked about it before, but it's been a long time.
Yeah.
I do have the issue that my dad had been, and this is my biological father, had been an alcoholic, and my mom had prayed him out of that. That's how she always worded it. Then my ex-husband was what someone in the mental health profession, I don't remember what the criteria was that they had called him a dry alcoholic, which to me absolutely fit because of the behaviors that I saw were very typical for an alcoholic, which his father had been also. And
did your ex-husband ever drink?
No.
Over the course of the time you knew him, he never drank?
No.
Did he drink prior to meeting you that you're aware of?
No. Mm-mm. But he certainly had those behaviors.
Okay.
And
In that
see,
person's mind, they thought using the word codependency was legitimate because they diagnosed him as a dry drunk, and I get that. I understand that.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
And so without having a conversation with that person to say, why would you use that particular definition when the person has never drank in their life? I'm not sure exactly why they would do that. It almost feels like just call an abuser, and that's what he was.
yeah. Yep.
That's the circle that I come from. So, that's the funny thing or the interesting thing about social services and psychological services and all of that. Depending on the perspective that you come from, that's what you bring into it, the mindset that you bring into it. And so I'm not at all disagreeing with that person that you spoke with because I don't know the framework for the conversation or anything else, but I just find it interesting that that was the choice they made to use that was the word choice they used.
So
And I
can
see that, I've seen that happen a lot where someone had been an alcoholic, for example, and they stopped drinking and they were 100% still an alcoholic. And I've seen that happen before. I've never really seen it happen before from someone who never drank before. On the other hand, I don't know the family of origin that your ex-husband came from or the dynamic that he was taught or, what went on in that household. So I have no right to say one way or the other.
sure. I get that.
Yeah.
So in general, are there any pointers you can give or maybe explanations of what exactly that means? Can you give us some scenarios maybe, or use some stories of some ladies that have come through your program?
Clarify for me, what exactly does what mean?
Oh, having a voice, learning how to have a
Oh,
voice.
having news. Okay, sorry.
No, you're fine. You're fine. I'm talking in generalizations and I'm not using my words, Becky.
Yeah. One other thing I wanted to explore real quick is you and I both talked in the past. We both have a similar approach to the world, is we're both really introverted. And I know that for me, if I'm not in a place where I'm in 100% in my comfort zone, where I feel like I can't have a voice, like seeing me on the one-on-one, seeing me in an environment where I'm completely comfortable, seeing me in a group of people that I don't know, I can be two different people.
Mhm.
And so, I've said 1,000 times, I would love to do a training for your room of 500. Please don't make me small talk before I go talk to them. And the person that's the introvert in me, just I have things to say, I have information, and I know things, but it's challenging for me. Even still, this many years of my life later, it's still challenging for me in circles of people that I don't know to find a voice because I don't know what to say. Now,
Mhm.
if you direct me, hey, here's a question, let's talk about it, then I'm good, but I'm not really
Mhm.
good at coming up with the questions. And so I wonder, that's another perspective that I wanted to get from you is, do you think that the introvert in you kind of plays into that feeling like you don't have a voice sometimes as well?
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. And we were talking before we started recording, you were talking about school. I
Yeah.
can remember sitting in school and I was a good student and the teacher would just ask a general question. Do you know what the answer is to this? And I knew it, boom, in my head, knew the answer. But if she were to call on me or he were to call on me, my brain would freeze up and I couldn't tell you the answer. And that's what happens when I feel even the least bit uncomfortable. I'm not sure if uncomfortable is quite the word I want, but to where I'm not feeling 100% safe. Um, and a question or a topic or whatever it's literally thrown in my face, more or less. And I'm the only other person in the room. And so there's this freezing that takes place inside me. I don't know if that's how common that would be for our viewers, but I do know to kind of bring up that topic and yet answer that question at the same time. That's where I come from on that.
Yeah, and some of that's personality style too, I think. I tend to be more of an introspective person my own self. And so if you put me on the spot, like if I'm in a room of people, what we've talked about in my bio, where you talked about my time that I served on the board of directors, I tend to be a very introspective person. And so if a question is thrown out, I have to think about it for a second, because I'm the kind of person that I want to weigh out my opinion. Do I think 100% this way? Do I think 100% that way? How do I think? And so if the question is thrown out and you want me to be the first person to answer it, that's challenging for me. Not because I don't have an opinion, but it takes me a minute to formulate one. And so, and that would just be a characteristic trait of me, that I'm very introspective. And so I want to think about it, pick my words accordingly, and make sure that I say it the right way. I don't want to just talk off the top of my head when the topic's really important. And so there's that too. I mean, that plays into it as well. But I do think that a lot of finding your voice, especially if you've come out of an abusive scenario, a lot of it really does have to do with your sense of esteem.